Maria Downey is our judge for the May 2013 print competition. This is an open-themed month. Maria was born and raised in England, but has lived in Texas for the last 34 years. She works with the advanced art students at Fairhill School in Dallas, teaching photography, and has given 2 seminars in photography at Midway College, Kentucky. Over the last 10 years, Maria has attended workshops by such legendary National Geographic photographers as Steve McCurry and Joe McNally. She has also worked with several notable English photographers, David Norton, Charlie Waite, Guy Edwards, and Anthony Spencer. In 2006, she joined a National Geographic trip around the world with their photographer Bob Christ. Maria's work has been published in Outdoor Photography, Cornwall Today, as well as travel guides and newspapers. She has published 2 books of photography on Cornwall, For the Love of Cadgwith and In the Heart of Cadgwith. One of Maria's portraits was requested for the National Portrait Gallery in London. Last year, she provided 78 images for the book which accompanied the BBC television series The Fisherman's Apprentice with Monty Halls. Maria is a master photographer at the Plano Photography Club, serves on their board, and won the Photographer of the Year Award for 2013. The PSA has qualified her as a judge for Camera Club competitions. Maria lives in Dallas but tries to reserve 3 to 4 months a year for her cottage in Cadgwith, Cornwall, England. Ready, Aim, Fire by Delise Foglia. I admire the way the photographer has captured the firing of the guns at the right moment, showing me the smoke from the instant of shooting. I like the intent posture of the man in the forefront and the angle of the 2 guns to the extreme right of the image, penetrating the smoke. The shooters appear to me to be well placed in this image. I believe this image would have benefited from being a bit sharper in focus with a punchier rendition of blacks to whites. 10 points. Michael Farnham, Feathers. This image shows me wonderfully sharp imagery in feathers, and the reflection and a great exposure which does not blow out the highlights. I particularly admire the photographer has caught a catchlight in the bird's eyes. I would have liked to see a little more of the bird's reflection in the water and less of the out-of-focus water in the distance. 12 points. Michael Rivera, Fine Lines and Wrinkles. I admire the way the lines in this image have been arranged by the photographer, and I like the strong tones that appear to me to match the subject. This image does not engage me the way it might have if there were one focal point, somewhere in the image for my eye to come to rest on, even perhaps something colored. 12 points. Ken Murphy, Weathered Footbridge. I admire how the photographer has captured the textures on this bridge and arranged the nails diagonally across the image. I would suggest cloning out the nail in the extreme right-hand bottom corner, which, because it is such a bright highlight, pulls my attention away from the rest of the picture. 13 points. Valencia, Spain by Jim Stump. I love the power of the bridge in this image, created by the low viewpoint, which I feel suits it perfectly. I enjoy the tones in this image and the texture of the underside of the bridge. I like, too, that the photographer gives me some people in the distance to give the bridge some scale. I would have wished to see this image just a bit sharper in the middle and the background. 14 points and honorable mention. Trees Wrapped in Fog by Chris Kobos. I love the drama of this image with the sparkles from the backlight. I find the image beautifully sharp on the trees, and I enjoy the mist rising from the waters behind them. I would have wished to see more space on the extreme right of this image to give the trees a bit more space. If that were not possible, I would suggest cropping out the 2 small trees on the right and a bit on the left of the image to give the remaining 5 trees more importance in the image. 14 points and 3rd place. Twinnie's Style and Attitude by Penny Clark. I find this a delightful portrayal of the subject, Twinnie's style and attitude. I admire the slightly sepia tone to this print to match the era, and it is a beautifully sharp and well-exposed print. 14 points and 2nd place. Cluster of Pods by Julie Horak. There is a lot in this image to delight my eye. This image strikes me as being well exposed, and the pods appear to me to be well positioned in the image. Good sharp focus allows me to linger on the spikes on the leaves, and I greatly enjoy the stems radiating out from the pods. 15 points and first place. Advanced Monochrome Prints. A Friendly Horse by Susan Stageman. To me, this image is all about the gesture of the child's hand to the horse's head, and I like the sharpness of the image at the moment of capture. My eye is distracted by the detail in the background just behind the child's hand, which could perhaps be darkened or burned to focus my attention on the action. I would also crop out the mother's ear, but leave just enough of her left hand to show that she is in her mother's arms. I would also lighten the shadow of whatever it is on the horse's head. 9 points. Me by Bob Krause. I'm impressed by the treatment of this image, and I find the harsh, gritty process seems very fitting to the subject. My eye would like to see a little more information to the right of the image to balance the strong imagery on the left 2/3 of this image. Some of it is just visible to the right of the edge of the mat. 10 points. Vietnam Memorial by Steve Havacek. I admire the juxtaposition of the flag with the names memorialized here. I also appreciate that the photographer has chosen to show the names not perfectly horizontal, which indicates to me that they are on a stone. I also like the amount of flag that the photographer has chosen to include. To have included more, in my opinion, would have distracted from the beauty of the carved names. There is just enough information here from the flag for me to know whose country these memorials refer to, without having to read the title. I believe I would have enjoyed this image more if the whole thing were in stronger focus. It seems to get softer towards the bottom of the frame. 10 points. Graveside Emotion at Tellico Cemetery, Ennis, Texas, by Janie Rumberger. I like the treatment of the sculpture, giving it a subtle grainy texture, and the choice of high contrast light pleases me in contemplating the subject. I find it perfectly sharp and well exposed. I am a little troubled by the inclusion of the flowers to the left of the memorial, which to my eye merge with the main subject. This is a lovely image, but I cannot score it higher because of much of the beauty here has been created by the sculptor rather than by the interpretation of the photographer. 11 points. Water Drop on Tulip by Tina Arms. The beauty in this image, to me, is the way the light has fallen on the drop of water. I also enjoy the texture of the petals. I find this image rather confusing in its assembly of elements and the way the shadows fall on part of the flower. I would suggest a severe crop to eliminate the shadowed part of the flower, but retaining the curve of the lower petal. Would focus my attention on the upper part of the flower and that perfect drop of water. 11 points. Flyover by Susan Burciaga. I'm impressed by the triangle shape of the birds in flight, which echoes the triangles of the hills below them. My eye is pleased by the sharpness of the birds contrasted with the ground as the photographer presumably has panned the camera. I also enjoy the angle of the bird's wings, which are uppermost in the image. In a totally perfect world, it would have pleased me to see a separation of each bird from another, but I know that is almost impossible. 14 points and honorable mention. Stay With Me by Rachel Cook. I love the light on each person in this image and the emotion that I feel emanates from each of them. I specifically like the gesture of the girl's mouth being open, as if she has just said, "Stay with me," as well as her holding on to the man. I would just have liked to see a little more of the man's left forearm. His upper arm is so strong in shape, and the lower part of his arm and hand seem a bit cut off. I would suggest a recrop, and if it won't fit the ratio, change the ratio of this image. I would also lighten the man's hair to separate him from the background at the top of the image. 14 points and third place. First Flight, 1946, by Gary Coles. I greatly admire the strong red touch in this image, echoes in the marking on the wing, and confirmed by the red border in this print. I particularly enjoy the sharp focus and the shine of the opening here, which contrasts well for me with the less sharp parts and the rest of the airplane. I might have enjoyed the blacks on the wings and the undercarriage being just a bit stronger. 14 points and second place. Simplicity by Richard Stern. Every part of this image is a joy to me. I love the superb detail in the curved petal in the foreground, and I enjoy moving my eye around the image, noting the subtle light at the extreme bottom right and the tiny bit of highlight on the petal to the right that is largely in shadow. The texture of the petal is just perfection to me. 15 points and first place. Masters Monochrome Prints. Dana Falconberry, 35 Denton, by Aaron Curry. I like the way the photographer has caught the performer singing with her guitar, and the catchlights in her eyes showing such emotion. My eye is uncomfortable with the dark object in the lower left of the image, which partially obscures the action of her right hand. I would have liked to see the sharpest focus be on the singer's face, not on the microphone, and it would have been ideal to me if the guitar and her hands were in sharper focus, since her playing is part of the story for me. I do recognize that this is a very difficult shot to make, perhaps with a telephoto lens in less than great light, and no doubt from some distance, and while the singer is moving all the time. 10 points. Desert Details by Suzanne Graham. I enjoy the texture of the grasses, which are beautifully sharp. My eye is a little troubled by the bush in the background to the left of the image, which merges somewhat with the grasses. Perhaps it was not possible to find a different perspective to isolate and simplify this image. 10 points. Church and Couture by Betty Johnson. I really enjoy the tones in this image, and the crisp focus on the church, and the textures the photographer offers me. My eye is a little bothered by the merging of the tree into the roof and how it brushes the edge of the cupola. I also feel the negative space in the sky at the top right of the image does not balance well to my eye with the tree to the left of the image. I also feel the layer of stones at the extreme bottom of the wall does not add any useful information to the image. I would like to see if cropping it out to include only the wall would simplify the handsome wall itself. 11 points. Ocean Waves, Crashing Rock by Harry Rumberger. I admire the print treatment of this image and the extraordinarily sharp focus. The photographer has captured for me the moment when the wave hits the rock and scatters the spray. I am a bit bothered by the complexity of the detail here. My eye is searching around the image for a major focal point on which to rest my attention. 11 points. Olmsted Point by Frank Richards. I enjoy the great sharpness in the trees and the rocks in this image, and the placement of the rocks. My eye is rather distracted by the heaviness of the shadow at the bottom of the image. I find my attention is pulled down to it and away from the drama of the two soaring pines. I would wonder if a little dodging of the shadows would make it less significant as an element. 11 points. Poker by Steve Reeves. I enjoy the placement of the chairs around the table and the sense of the players having just stepped away. I also am pleased by the good tones that I feel suit the subject. I am a little distracted by the background, which, although out of focus, rather draws my eye away from the poker game. I wonder if some burning or darkening of the background would allow my attention to stay on the poker table. 11 points. J. Hoppenstein, Backstage Alleyway. I feel this image has good tones, is well exposed, and in sharp focus, and I like the arrangement of the steps and doorways. I particularly like the detail in the blocked-off doorway to the bottom right of the image. My eye would have liked to have seen just a bit more of the door to the top left, and a little more detail in the bottom left below the staircase. I feel there could have been some interesting detail there. 13 points. Joshua Trees, Mojave National Preserve by Bob Johnson. To me, this is a beautifully exposed image with wonderful texture and detail in the trees and grasses, with good contrast to the dark, almost cloudless sky. I find this image a bit distracting on the right-hand side. I would like to see if cropping out the last tree and the clouds above it would simplify this image and put more focus on the tree in the left foreground. 13 points. Shawnee Mills by Gary Kelly. I am impressed by the treatment of this image, which gives me beautiful detail and texture. My eye enjoys noting the power lines at the pleasing diagonal, contrasting with the swirls of tire tracks in the foreground. There is so much for me to explore in this image, which delights me the more I linger over the different elements here. This is really down to the smallest detail, but my eye is a little disturbed by the apparent distortion of perspective on the right-hand side. This might not have been so obvious if the doorway on the right had been cropped out. 13 points. Timeless Travel by Houston Brown. This is a delightful portrait study of the mother and children. The photographer has captured the sitters with happy and relaxed expressions, and the period setting adds a lot of charm for me. I find this image to be well exposed and beautifully sharp. I especially love the dimples on the little boy's cheeks. As a portrait, I find this image to be outstanding and feel sure the family are thrilled with the result. Passing Through by Kay Hargis. I really enjoy spending time with this image. The vanishing point allows my eye to settle for a moment on the window that catches the sunlight, the way the lamps are beautifully positioned clear of the overhang, and the slight blurring of the rail cars to tell me about the passage of the train. I like the texture of the bricks and the stones behind the rail cars. My attention is also intrigued by the reversed bench against the wall. If pressed to find something to do to this image, I would only ask if some dodging of the deep shadows or lifting of the midtones would add just a little punch. However, the photographer might be wishing to add a somber note to this image, in which case I'd leave it alone. 14 points and honorable mention. String and Egg by Wayland Threadgill. This image is intriguing to me, with the contrast of the perfect form of the egg contrasted with the irregular ovals created by the placement of the string. My eye is delighted to see the texture of the wood in the background and the strength of light towards the top of the image. I am just a little concerned that the egg and its shadow are placed a little too close to the right-hand edge of the frame. 14 points and third place. Barn at Penn Farm by Dennis Fritchie. Exquisite detail in the foliage and the amazing texture of the barn timbers. This image has a wonderful air of drama about it. If I were to be ultra picky, my eye is a little bothered by the merging of the barn with the tree, fence, and posts at the extreme right-hand edge of the image. It might not have been possible to separate the barn from the tree. 14 points and second place. Steam Boiler by Dan Meredith. I am captivated by the drama and mystery of this image. I enjoy the masterly use of negative space to increase the impact, and in my view the slight distortion adds power to this image. I find it beautifully sharp and with great tonal values to bring out the textures. 15 points and first place.